about that EU anthem moment, shall we? All the Brexit Party's MEPs turning their back. Why did you do that?
Well, the President of the Parliament referred to it as the anthem for the nation of Europe, and the EU is certainly not a nation. And you know, if they played all the national anthems for all the countries represented, then fair enough. But nobody voted for the nation of the EU or the nation of Europe, so it wasn't right, in our view, to stand for it.
What do you make of that, Caroline Voaden? Do you think that it was a reasonable protest to make?
Not at all. I thought it was childish and disrespectful and just typical of what we expect from the Brexit Party. I thought it was appalling.
OK, do you want to come back at that, Lance? Childish and disrespectful?
Well, childish and disrespectful, you know, it's the EU have an unofficial code about, how one should dress and dress respectfully, and they're marched in, the Lib Dems wearing T-shirts, which didn't say "Stop Brexit." They said it said testicles to Brexit, but slightly less politely than that. I don't think that was terribly respectful and certainly very childish.
So the difference between us is that the Brexit Party were turning their backs on Europe and disrespectfully turning their backs on the national anthem, whereas we are embracing Europe, and we have come back to Europe with 16 Liberal Democrat MEPs rather than one, which is a huge endorsement of our policies, and we came in with one strong, clear message, and the best way to do that silently for the cameras was to wear a T-shirt, and all our colleagues were thrilled to see us, and as we walked through into the Parliament, people were patting us on the back and they were clapping and they were so thrilled to see us.
You just said national anthem. It's not a national anthem. The EU is not a nation state. And that is wrong, and that is why we had to turn our back on it. It is not a nation. No one has voted for the EU to be a nation.
Okay,
it's not that.
European anthem. European anthem.
Fair enough.
OK, and to pick up, Caroline Voaden, on your protest, the Liberal Democrat protest, which Lance Forman has referred to there, wearing the T-shirt saying "Stop Brexit" on one side, a ruder version of it on the other side. Some people might say that's a bit childish to put swear words about Brexit on T-shirts at a moment like this.
Well, we have a really strong message. You know, we've come here to do a job. We want to stay here. Brexit has not happened yet, and we are absolutely determined that we will be here for 5 years, and our European colleagues want us to stay here. So we wanted to wear something which would show how passionately we believe in the European project, this ambitious, unique project, which is bringing European countries together. You know, let's not forget that we are actually in Strasbourg this week, you know, a city which has changed hands over the century. Wars have been fought here, lives have been lost here. There's a military cemetery just outside the door. You know, this city means something, and the European Union is the most amazing peace project, and we want to remain part of that. So our T-shirt was us visibly saying to our European friends and colleagues, we want to be here and we want to stay.
Lance Forman, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is that wars have been fought here, and they have been fought here because of a lack of democracy. And what you are doing is standing, and you're putting two fingers up to democracy in Britain. 17.4 million people voted for Brexit, and by saying what you said on the back of your T-shirts, you're basically insulting all of them. And, you know, there was a democratic vote taken in the UK. We have to move forward with that. You can't keep resisting it, because if we lose democracy, Europe does become a very dangerous place.
17.4 million people voted 3 years ago for something that was promised, which would give them all the benefits,
hasn't been delivered, though.
All the benefits that we have at the moment, but following none of the rules. Now, that is clearly never going to happen. It was not possible. And what they're being offered now by both the Tory leadership contenders is possibly a no-deal Brexit, which nobody voted for. Let's be clear, no-deal Brexit was not even searched for on Google until 2017. It did not exist at the time of the referendum, and it is not what people voted for, and now that's what they're being offered, and we believe that it would be damaging to our country for it to go ahead. So we are saying that for the good of our country, for the good of people who run businesses, for the good of our NHS, for peace, for climate change, for so many things, we have to stop this charade.
But 498 MPs voted for it, and in a general election they were voted in, so the public have actually voted for it. There was a choice. either they could negotiate a deal or they would accept no deal. They voted for that.
No, that's not what
that was Article 50. It was, absolutely.
No deal was not mentioned.
OK, and Lance Forman, I just interested, because some people watching might be a little bit confused. You're just first day as an MEP there in the European Parliament, but some people will say, why are you turning up? Why are you taking the pay from the EU, from an institution that you have so little regard for?
Because I think it's important that we keep reminding people back home why we're doing this. And, just on my very first day here, what we noticed was a complete waste of money, and two, B, just total lack of democracy. We were in the main chamber for 20 minutes. That was all the business for the day. This place, this magnificent building that we're in, gets used 3.5 days a month. They spend 200 million euros every year transporting papers and people from Brussels to Strasbourg. It's a complete waste of money. And in terms of democracy, it was extraordinary what went on in that chamber this morning. Somebody stood up and said, why are 3 recently elected MEPs from Catalonia not being allowed into the chamber? And the president, instead of answering that question, he totally disregarded it and just moved on to a lottery. He completely disregarded it. There is no democracy in this place. We have to move on, and we have to remind the British people why they voted for Brexit. That is really important.
Caroline Voaden, do you think that's a fair point?
Sorry, I'm struggling to hear you. Could you repeat the question,
I just
please?
was wondering what your response was to what Lance Forman was saying there. Do you think he's got a fair point?
Well, I don't think he has got a fair point. I mean, I would agree with Lance that there's a huge expense that goes into moving the Parliament down to Strasbourg once a month, and I think probably most MEPs here would agree that it's high time that was changed. But, that exists for historical reasons. There's a very complicated background to that. And as I said, Strasbourg is a really archetypal place for the European Parliament to sit because of its history. And I think it's more important that we join together with our European colleagues and look at reforms that can be made to make Europe function better, perhaps. But it is totally democratic. I mean, we were elected in a democratic election. And, for the last 3 weeks, I have been working in Brussels with Liberal MEPs from right across Europe in a group of 108 MEPs. And we've already started work looking at a document which is going to outline legislation for the next 5 years, which includes lots of reforms, which I think people in the UK would be really pleased about. And so we are already working on that, which will go to the Commission, and it will shape all sorts of things, like how we address the climate emergency, for example.
A quick word on that point made by Caroline Voaden there, Lance Forman. You say it's not democratic, and yet you've been democratically elected.
Well, we have been democratically elected. There are 29 of us in the Brexit Party. We're the single largest party in the European Parliament, and we have been elected by people in Britain that want Britain out of the EU. And we are going to do everything we can over the coming months, up to the 31st of October 2019, to make sure that is delivered. And we want to maintain good relations with our partners in Europe. And, we'll be meeting with our other MEPs, and, I'm sure the relationships will be excellent. But we have to move on now. The vote was taken in 2016. Okay. It's really hurting Britain that this thing is being dragged on and on. It's humiliating us too. Okay, We've got to move on.
And I think it's really important just to note that a million more people on May the 23rd voted for the Remain parties than voted for the Brexit party.
Okay, so let's not reopen that right now.
We got more votes across the UK.
Okay, nonsense. But I just wanted to ask, Lance Forman, you said there were going to be good relations with your colleagues there. Turning your back on them to start off with doesn't really set a friendly tone, does it, to kick things off?
Well, not at all. Look, there were many MEPs in the room that actually didn't stand up for the anthem at all. I think people do understand where we're coming from, and it's important that that there is an understanding. We wish to have very good relations with the countries of Europe. The British people have got nothing against either the countries or the people of Europe. It's just this EU institution. It is wasteful, it's corrupt, it's not democratic, and we just have to move on. For the sake of Britain, for the sake of Europe, we have to move on.
And Caroline Voaden, I heard Lance Forman mentioning that date, October the 31st, the date that the two Conservative leadership candidates are both saying they want to honour. You're not going to be in a job there for very long, are you? What can you hope to achieve in those months?
Well, even Anne Widdecombe is saying that she's expecting to be here way past October the 31st. I mean, I'm really not expecting us to be walking out of the chamber on October the 31st. You know, Brexit hasn't happened yet, and the mood of the country has changed. And like I said, 1 million more people voted for Remain parties in these European elections than voted for the Brexit Party. The Brexit Party couldn't even win a by-election in Peterborough, you know, in its own backyard. I think the momentum is growing. People don't want to know Brexit, and I honestly believe that we'll be here for 5 years, and some of us will be working really hard and doing a good job as part of Europe. And we want to lead in Europe. We don't want to leave it. You know, we want Britain to be a shining light in Europe, helping shape legislation that will benefit citizens, 500 million people right across Europe. And that's what we hope to do, and we expect to be here for 5 years doing it, and I hope to be up for re-election in 5 years' time.
OK, on that note, we are out of time, but Caroline